of hope, and some of us in the place of darkness, a place where we need to see your light. Gracious Lord, you predicted things to come long ago, suffering and pain, and yet you also promised that even through that suffering, that pain, that even through the things that cause and create darkness in our lives, that your light would shine through, that we would find hope in you. Gracious Lord, speak your words of hope and peace unto our hearts this morning. Help us to prepare ourselves for your coming. Help us to be in your presence. Do this in spite of me or through me. Amen. The first Sunday of Advent has always kind of been a difficult one for me to preach. It's difficult for me because the first Sunday of Advent looks at the second coming of Christ. You see, Advent as a whole is a season where we are looking for the coming of Christ, and most of us associate that with Jesus' first coming, the celebration of Christmas. And we look for this idea of joy and hope, and we see this time of family and celebration that is to come, and that's where we want to dwell. We want to be excited. But when we hear the words of Luke chapter 21, or at least when I hear those words, I hear this story of a world that is being shaken by its foundations, a world that is filled with all manner of storms, a world where people are in fear of the chaos and the devastation and the destruction that is about to begin. And it creates a disconnect for me between the celebration and the joy and the peace that we're spending most of Advent and then this Sunday. And then this year, I found myself in a place where I understand it a little bit better. Because this year, I think some of us may be in a place where we are in that darkness. Some of us, some of you, may be feeling that the world is falling apart around you. That hope and joy and peace are not something that you're feeling right now. Perhaps there are storms raging in your lives. Perhaps as you look at the future and at the signs that are all around you of what is to come, you find yourself worried or angry or even afraid of what might happen in the next couple weeks or months. And I realize that perhaps the reason that this first Sunday of Advent looks at these passages and at the second coming is because that we need to see that even in this darkness, even in this fear, that there's a choice. That we can choose to continue to rely on our own strength and our own power. We can continue to choose to allow the world to beat us down, to make us afraid. Or we can choose to look toward Jesus' light, to look toward a brighter future, a promise of something to come. Our scripture lesson starts out with Jesus talking about how there will be signs in the sun and moon and stars. That men on earth will quake and will fall over and faint in fear as they look at the roaring of the waves, as earth and heaven itself are shaking. Are there storms raging around you? Does the sun, the moon, the stars in your life, the oceans in your life, do they seem to be slamming against you and the path and direction that you want to go? Jesus says in the next verse, in these times, straighten up and turn your face to heaven, for the time of your redemption is drawing near. And in this time of storms, when all of these people are afraid of what is to come, Jesus is telling those who follow him, don't be afraid, don't be one of those who faint, but instead be one of those who look up into heaven, look up to God, and know that it is your time of redemption that is drawing near. And he continues to teach the disciples, and he tells them, think about the fig tree, and all the trees, in fact. That when you see the leaves beginning to spring on the trees, does that not tell you that summer is coming, that the time of winter is about to end? So it is like that with this. That as you see those trees and you look for summer, when you see these signs, when you see this darkness surrounding you, when you see the end of things to come, look to God and see the new beginning that is about to happen. See what God is promising on the other side. And he continues even more, reminding the disciples about the fact that all of these things are going to happen, and that before this generation passes away, all things will happen. I think what he's saying there is that in our lives, every one of us, at some point, the world as we know it, the world that we've built up, the world that we have become comfortable with, is going to be shaken by its foundations. It's going to be turned over and tossed upside down. We are going to find ourselves in the darkness and in the storms. We are going to find ourselves in that place of worry and fear. We may even find ourselves in that place where we are angry with God and asking, why me? It'll happen for each of us at different points. Some of us, it may happen multiple times in our lives. Losses of jobs, illness, the ending of relationships, whether through breakup, divorce, falling out, or from a loved one being called home. Our world will seem dark and bleak, and yet Jesus calls them to look for what is to come, to look with joy at what he's about to do. As he continues, he says to them, do not let dissipation or drunkenness or the worries of this world drag you down but instead be alert and looking for what is to come. It is so easy for us when we are surrounded in darkness to try to self-medicate, to turn to substances, or to curl up in a ball on our couch and cry ourselves to sleep and shake as we worry about the future. And yet, Jesus calls us to something more than that. He calls us to be ready for what is to come, to instead of allowing this world to defeat us, to find strength. And as I continue to think about that in our lives, I realize that when we try to rely on our own strength, we limit ourselves. You know, our strength tells us that the only way to be victorious is to recover from illness, or to conquer our adversaries. The only way that we can win in our own strength is physical healing or restoration to things of the way they always were, or better than they were, in the way that we want. And yet, God has the ability and an unlimited strength. And God can find victories and goodness and redemption in ways that we never expected. Take Jesus' own story. If Jesus relied solely on the strength of the world, then Jesus, by all accounts, lost. On Good Friday, the Pharisees and the Romans nailed Jesus to a cross. He was put into the grave. He was dead. It was over, by all accounts in the world. But Jesus didn't rely on human strength alone. Jesus placed his faith and confidence in the strength of God, a strength that is outside of this world, a strength that is beyond limitation. And Easter Sunday, Jesus rose from the dead victorious. Something that the Pharisees did not expect. Something that the world had not anticipated, including his own disciples. And more than that, Jesus promised that with his resurrection, those who would believe in him would also find their resurrection. That when we place our faith and our trust in God, that there is nothing that this world can throw against us that can prevail against God's strength and power. But even the strongest among us, if we rely solely on ourselves, we will fall and we will crumble under the weight of the world. This Advent, we have the opportunity to be in the darkness and to see God's light shine through. We have the opportunity to choose whether we are going to let this world destroy us by relying on our own strength and our own understanding of things. We have the choice to allow this world to beat us down, to scare us, to give us worry with all of its sin and death, with its cancers, with its breakups, with its sundering of relationship. Or we can choose to straighten up, to turn our eyes toward heaven and to look for God, to see the hand that is outstretched to pull us into the new future, the brighter hope, to see how Jesus is lighting our path forward, how Jesus can take the world and shake it up and give us a restoration, or even better, a new beginning, when everything seems like it is coming to an end. Jesus can bring us the hope that we need. He can be the hand that reaches down to us when we are in the mud and pull us, and quicksand, and pull us out. But we got to stop looking down at the sand, at the mud, at the darkness that surrounds us, and instead look up to His light, His help, and His hope. This Advent, I hope that most of you are in the season of light, that most of you are in a place of celebration and joy and happiness. For those of you who are not, for those of you who may be being battered by the storms of life, who may find themselves in darkness, I hope and I pray that in this time you are able to trust in God. That here and now, when things seem so bleak, that you would find that hope that only God can give. And that you can anticipate the new beginnings that are about to become. Amen.